What's going on, guys? Hey, we're back. We got a brand new Civ Div video. This is about, I believe it's about the fortress belt that in the east in Donbas is Konstantinivka, Kramatorsk, Sloviansk. That those like basically three last major strongholds in Donbas that are kind of holding the remainder of Donbas from the enemy push. So we're gonna watch this, man. Please check out SibDiv's channel. He's the GOAT at this kind of stuff, at making this kind of content, and he's extremely experienced. And he spent quite a bit of time here in Ukraine as well. So we're gonna jump into this. Before we do, I'm gonna introduce myself for any newcomers we may have. We got a little bit of construction as we do. All right, so also grab a t-shirt and jump in the Discord if you're not already. We keep our uncensored footage there for our members and tons of other resources, recruitment resources, stuff like that. Oh yeah, the t-shirts are anti-Putin social club t-shirts. We got another couple weeks for those in the merch store. All right. Make sure that wasn't a drone. My name is Saxon. I go by Vegas here in Ukraine. Before I came to Ukraine, I was a firefighter and an EMT outside Fort Worth, Texas for about 3 years, 3.5 years. My last year of my fire service is when I got my EMT license. Right after I finished clinicals in the ER, I came out to Ukraine in January of 2023. I tried to help in some hospitals and stuff, use my EMT license, or try to find some like search and rescue type of unit. It was too soon. There wasn't much infrastructure set up for foreigners, so foreigners were basically being told to go to the International Legion. I went to the Legion. They said, "Hey, we need combat medics. You're going to be a combat medic." I said, "Cool." I trained with them about 9 weeks of your basic infantry training. Then I deployed to Kupiansk with 1st Battalion, Charlie Company, 3rd Platoon, and was in a trench line out there in Kupiansk and did a couple different combat rotations on the trench or in the trenches, and then left, went back to the U.S., sold my truck, sold my stuff, grabbed my cats, came back to Ukraine, helped start Azov's International Battalion. I ended up deploying with Azov's first group, Alpha Company, as a combat medic and did multiple combat missions with Azov. And then when that deployment finished, I came back to central Ukraine, and now I'm working on a whole bunch of other stuff, including what I consider to be very important, which is making content for you guys and trying to spread the word of Ukraine's fight, keep people's minds on Ukraine, and as well as inform foreigners about good units to join, how to get to Ukraine, the safest ways to go about it, so on and so forth. All right. Ooh, people that hate. Okay. I'll go ahead and just play it. I will shut up.
War is ultimately dictated by three main things, which is not drones. It is water, elevation, and asphalt. So when we take a look at Ukraine's next big fight, which is the Fortress Belt, and this fight is coming up pretty soon. It's happening right now. There are fabs entering Kramatorsk. We have to look at the terrain as much as we have to look at the direct.
Just a little bit of context on that deployment I was just mentioning with Azov. I was living in Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, so I was living in this fortress belt there, and there were still some civilians there. It was what they call like what do they call it? A garrison city, so it was primarily military, but there's still civilians there. But that was almost a year ago now. Actually, it was almost exactly a year ago, and it is much different out there now. It is only military, from my understanding. And they're getting hit really hard.
The Russians might be coming. Right now, it's just about the end of summer of 2026. Chasiv Yar has fallen, and Konstantinivka is being bombed to absolute rubble. And the potential fall of Konstantinivka is the direct result of the multi-year operation of the Russian military to take Chasiv Yar. Now, I was there in 2024. It took them years to go from Bakhmut, a couple kilometers away, to Chasiv Yar. And we had a defense belt along the canal that was dug in, well defended, with tons of resources. But because the Russians using sabotage teams, as soon as they reached the forest right here, they were able to go and penetrate our line and eventually push us back a little bit further. So the pressure on Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, which is the fortress belt, all emanates from the high ground that we held in Chasiv Yar. So we were trying our best to hold that. But eventually that canal became unusable for anybody except for infantry. When we had our drone operations there, I saw the decay of our lines over that 2-month period, where eventually us as a Mavic team were locked down inside that canal for half the day. We could not go outside because there's drones above us, there's FPVs everywhere, and artillery bombardments all over our positions. So they eventually took that high ground, and now that is overlooking Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. So what is between the fortress belt and Chasiv Yar? Well, it's honestly just a bunch of fields. It's got a couple settlements, small settlements, but nothing really big in between, and about 5 to 10 kilometers of gray zone. That is going to be the gray zone that the Russians have to get through. And I think the Russians see that. The way that they've taken every city up until now, Avdiivka, Bakhmut, Konstantinivka, is that they pressure all sides at once, and then they find the weak spots, which usually envelops the city they're trying to attack, and then they're able to kind of surround it on 3 sides. And that's how they've been taking, the cities thus far. And in the larger picture of the fortress belt, we can see this maneuver playing out. We see Liman in the north being almost taken, and it's being fought over right now, and we see Konstantinivka in the south, and that is the pincer that's taking place. The good thing is that it's wider than it was in the past. When it comes to one single city, if you surround it, like I've mentioned before, it's a little bit easier to go and overcome the defenders pretty quickly. But when it's a chain, a belt of multiple cities that have a large pincer around them, it becomes more difficult. Not to mention that if they were to push with infantry from Chasiv Yar, there'd be a lot of death in between, 5 to 10 kilometers of open field, and then they're going to reach the Seversky Donets, which is splitting a lot of these cities. And because of that, they're not going to have an easy time crossing over to the other side of these cities. But the biggest thing that Chasiv Yar gives them is a way to put mortar assets and indirect fire and drone support up on the high ground. RF drones, which is still the most widely used drones out there on the battlefield, they're able to get unlimited line of sight on these towns, and that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing cabs and fabs being launched from Russian jets hitting Kramatorsk, and we're also seeing fiber optics frequently patrolling these parts. And obviously this oblast that Russia needs to take in order to successfully complete the special military operation that they've changed the goals so much over the last 4.5 years. In order to take that, you have to go beyond the fortress belt. But if you remember Avdiivka, it was quite similar. Once they took
Hold on, I want to pause here. This is kind of a short video, so I'm going to pause and share some of my info or insights. This is cool because Sibdiv spent time in Chasiv Yar, and I spent time right here in this fortress belt, and a lot of our operations were right out here in this region. It's now occupied, but that's where I was. So I wanted to mention here, since we have this map up, something that I think is never really covered, because I guess why would you cover it? This fortress belt is hugely significant, right? For many reasons, including the reasons Sibdiv's talking about right now. But even when I was there, I was witnessing the Ukrainians building redundancy plans, building a plan B, plan C, and plan D behind this fortress belt. So there's trench lines after trench lines after trench lines after trench lines, tank ditches, those really deep, wide trenches that infantry literally and vehicles will get stuck in. They can't climb out. The concertina wire everywhere, C wire everywhere, mines, mine positions that they're gonna be able to fill. So yes, this would be devastating. Absolutely devastating to lose this fortress belt, 100%. But even in the worst case scenario, the Ukrainians have serious defenses already set up here, which is really cool.
The stronghold of Avdiivka, with all the defenses that were put in place. Once they took that over, it didn't take them long to go and push even more westward. It's a difficult situation Ukraine's in. They have to hold this belt, but at the stage, they have plenty of defenses. So they mostly have to worry about the pincer movement that's happening around the edges of this belt. So what are the different directions that Russia might take? Well, the first one, obviously, is going to be Konstantinivka. They want this because they know crossing those fields from Chasiv Yar, probably not the best idea. So they need to take that southern town and work themselves up to Druzhkivka and the other Druzhkivka, and then eventually Kramatorsk. So that's the southern push that they might do. So they would be taking the H20 highway from Konstantinivka. They would have to use that in order to penetrate further into these cities, into the belt. That's gonna be super. And anybody who's on that road is going to be watched. And that's like the only way that you can get there, because there's a ridge line and a river. There's all sorts of stuff that contains them to that road. It's not going to be an easy attack. Before we get into the northern flank, which I think might be the most expected way, they would come down and attack this belt. Well, let's look at the eastern direction, the Chassivyar line. This is the most direct route. It's rolling fields and a couple tree lines. And as we know, that is the place that everybody dies in Ukraine. If you're in the tree lines, if you're in the open fields, it doesn't matter how much armor you have, you're not going to make it. You have to cross those open fields with enough manpower in order to stage an incredible, powerful attack on the line that's Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. So once again, if we look at Chassivyar to Bakhmut, it took them years to cross there. I've watched it. It was so slow. Even with the DRG sabotage team units, 3 to 5 guys, they weren't able to gather enough manpower and keep them from drinking their own piss for a couple months in a basement, and to have the strength to go and do an assault. They weren't able to do that for years. I've watched tank assaults in open fields just south of Andriivka. That did not go well at all. So I just don't think that this eastern flank push would be the best way for Russia. And next comes the Le Mans direction. I did an FPV operation. I didn't even take part. I was just kind of there way back at the beginning of my 4th time in Ukraine. But I was in Terny. And if you see Terny, it was taken a while ago. And we were in a tree line. We had Javelin teams, we had FPV teams, we had everybody set up, and we were able to hold them out. But that was when Russia was starting to introduce fabs and cabs. And I remember seeing my first fab, it was 3 of them in a row, hitting the forest right down in Terny. Now, eventually, the Russians were able to push across. Once they took over Terny...
Cabs and fabs. Oh, shit. I did move myself back. I don't know if it really matters. Cabs and fabs are those big glide bombs that Russia launches, and literally they're just massive bombs that have these fixed wings on them, and they glide into their targets, and they level buildings, they level apartment blocks, full villages. I mean, they won't annihilate a whole village, but they'll take out 3 or 4 houses for sure.
They quickly pushed through the tree lines and just kind of suppress all teams there. It was in 2024, late 2024, where the drone teams now had to operate 6-10 kilometers away from the zero line. Before we were 2 kilometers away, no problem. So it really changed the game, and I think that's a big reason they were able to make so much headway there. But Le Mans is being fought over right now, and it looks like potentially they're going to be able to take Le Mans. Now, what does that give them after that? Well, that's part of the pincer. That's the northern pincer, and they're going to start to try and maybe get to Izium if they have to do a really wide pincer, or maybe they're going to start going south to Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. And the problems that they're going to face is the wetlands, which just makes armored assaults not possible. So the sabotage teams are what they're really going to be relying on. But the goal of taking Le Mans isn't just so that the infantry can be closer to where they need to be eventually. It's to get the fiber optic teams, the FPV teams, all the assets they need to suppress the M03 highway. That's what they want. They want to be able to suppress that highway, reduce the logistics that are able to enter the belt, and then they would push in slowly, kind of like Konstantinivka. And that's really the biggest problem. We don't have a main road that connects from east to west to these cities. It's all north to south. So they're pretty close. They're trying to pincer it off and keep it isolated. So that way the logistics can't come in and you slowly degrade the defenses that are in the belt. Now, what is the Ukrainian defense in all this? They're ready for this. They've been...
Hold on, I just wanted to add a little bit of context here to Sivdiv's point about Le Mans. Where is Le Mans? Le Mans right here. So this, I would agree. It would probably be the route of least resistance to kind of come in behind the fortress belt and set up this, because this is the fortress belt right here. Kind of set up this this pincer maneuver and try to cut off logistics and supply to Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and Konstantinivka. But it's worth mentioning that Azov and other units have been fighting in this Crimea forest up here and Le Mans since 2023. So they've been taking ground, as you can see, because Crimea forest was obviously Ukrainian at one point. So they're taking ground here, but this has been a pretty solid strong point for the last 3 years. So keep that in mind too. It might be the path of least resistance, let's say, but that's not to say that it'll be an easy route for them at all.
Or maybe they're going to start going south to Sloviansk and ready for this. They've been ready for this since 2014. They knew that this is the belt they have to stand on. The strategy isn't to hold every meter of dirt. It's to channel the Russian armor into pre-designated spots where artillery and drones can hit them. And the terrain really agrees with this as well. So it's just gonna be a bloodbath if the Russians try and push further in. So the whole Donbas, all these cities, they're mining cities. So they have mounds of dirt, they have tunnel structures, giant factories. It's meant for mining. That's what Donbas is known for. And because the factories there, it's pretty easy to put up drone antennas and everything you need. So they also
Perfect example of what I was just talking about. Behind this fortress belt, also in front of it, but behind this fortress belt, exactly what I'm talking about. These are tank ditches, super deep vehicle ditches. If for some reason a vehicle is able to get past that, then they've got dragon's teeth right here. And in front of all that, up here, they've got sea wire, which is just going to be, and all of this is theoretically passable, right? You can traverse this. It could take a while, but you can. But the goal is to catch them up, basically snag them, if you will, physically or metaphorically, so that the drones will just smoke anything that comes in this region. A tank gets caught in one of these traps for a few hours, FPVs are going to annihilate it. Infantry get caught up in any of this wire, or get what's happening a lot of the times is infantry, when they're trying to get over these tank ditches, they actually get stuck in them because they're just, it's like 8 feet, 8, 9 feet of solid dirt. So if you fall in there, you're not getting out, dude. You really got to, you got to make like a human ladder and like you got to hope you've got a team with you. But if you're one of these Russian reconnaissance groups with 1 or 2 people, dude, you guys are screwed. And we've seen these tank ditches fill up with enemies. The Russians will just continue to fall in there and die, fall in there, FPV, fall in there, get drone dropped, fall in there, die.
had the line of sight that the Russians now have in Chasiv Yar on that giant ridgeline. Now, one of the coolest things that the Ukrainians have is that these factories were meant to withstand a NATO bombing campaign during the Cold War. So they have a lot of tunnels underneath. They have a lot of tunnels, subterranean structures. And if you know anything about me, I'm a big fan of that. And I think that's where they can store all the drones they need. They can store food and weapons and everything they need. Just look at Mariupol. How long were the defenders able to survive and not be killed, until they had to surrender? For a long time. Just having that subterranean structure, which we don't really have elsewhere in Ukraine, not too much. Zaporizhia, not so much. Chasiv Yar, we didn't really have a whole lot. To have that is really strategically beneficial. So given my experience, given what I just told you guys, what do I think the future holds? It's tough to say. There's a lot of changes happening on the battlefield. Every 6 months, there's some new giant innovation, some giant deterrent, whatever it is. There's a big change in warfare happening every 6 months. And not to mention the huge mix-up of Ukrainian military leadership right now in the right direction, in the direction of innovation. So I'm not too sure, but all I know is that the Russians are doing this pincer movement and they're trying to isolate these towns. And if they reach the highways, it's going to give Ukraine a hard time. But at the same time, they have a subterranean structure, just like Avdiivka had. It's going to depend on a lot of different things. I think that the Ukrainians can hold this belt. It's definitely necessary for the defense of Donbas. If this belt falls, then Donbas falls. Almost certainly, based off of what we know from Avdiivka and elsewhere. So that's pretty much all I want to say. Just want to kind of describe what's happening on the battlefield over there in Donbas, in the wider picture, and kind of what we're looking at. Slava Ukraina, Heroam Slava. These heroes have been defending this area for years, and they've been holding the line, slowly trickling away at the Russians' own playbook of attrition warfare, and it's pretty sick. So to end this video, and to look at a wider perspective, in order for Russia to take this belt, it might take another couple years. Is the Russian public, are they able to withstand a couple more years of wild berries going up in flames? Are their gas prices skyrocketing to the ceiling? Are they able to deal with the middle strike drones and Crimea being locked down? Are they able to deal with that? Just for a couple minds. It's disgusting what they're doing, but thank God that we have heroes that are holding the ground, defending this land, knowing what's at stake every single day. It's an incredible testament to human morality, being able to hold the line with your own life for years. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Hope you guys learned something. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Awesome video, man. So good. Please check SibDiv's channel out if you haven't already. I can guarantee 99% of you, if you have found my channel, my little channel, you know who SibDiv is and you follow SibDiv. But if you don't, please do. Completely agree with him. I mean, almost every video that we watch of SibDiv's, it's just me piggybacking on what he's saying. It's never me contradicting what he's saying, because he's on par all the time. I will say, I think how do I say this? If Russia continues taking the economic losses that they are via their fuel, their economy, right? Their critical infrastructure, like their wild berries, which is their Amazon supply, their version of Amazon. Um, if they continue taking these losses, I don't think it'll collapse Russia, but I do see the Russian population. We already see it getting fed up. And there are groups of people now, specifically in Russian governments, that are starting to speak up against Putin and saying, "What are we doing, man? This was supposed to be a few-day operation. We're on year 5 now, and now our civilians can't get gas. They can't order from the main, distributing uh, company, Wild Berries." Um, it's a problem for Russians now. And before it was never a problem for Russians. Russians could do it was like there was no issue, right? The war was so far away from them, it was out of sight, out of mind. Now they've got drones flying over their hometowns. Now it's their problem too. So now they're starting to speak up. Um, I think Ukraine's in a good, I don't want to say a good position, but the best position they've been in since the beginning of the war. It's still absolutely mind-boggling to me that we're on year 5 of this, of a first world free nation being invaded militarily, and the lack of support is incredible to me. It's, again, I've said this so many times, but this will go down in history as such a monumental failure of the people of Ukraine and the ideas of freedom and democracy. It doesn't matter how much money you send to Ukraine. It doesn't matter how many supplies you send to Ukraine, even. It's not, I mean, so it's been helpful. It's been extremely helpful. And I think it's safe to say Ukraine has been able to fight as long as they have been because of the help, um, financial help, supply help, resources, stuff like that. But this is year 5, and the West, the U.S., the Europeans are still just helping from the sidelines, still just throwing supplies from the sidelines. It drives me nuts, man. And I'm not even suggesting, even though I do think it would be great, I'm not suggesting these nations put soldiers on the ground to fight Russia, but they can bring NGOs and um, different companies and military organizations into Ukraine to help 1,000 other ways besides picking up a rifle and fighting the enemy. They can help in all these other cities with medical aid, supply and logistics, um, manufacturing, production, so many ways they can help. And nobody is willing to put their country in Ukraine to help Ukraine. Drives me insane, man. Anyways, I could go on a tangent, and I've done this before, but I won't do that to you guys this time. We'll leave it at that. I love you guys. We'll see you in the next one.